Richard Tice, the Tories think they're onto a vote winner here. Whether or not legislation works or not is another matter. Do you think they are onto a vote winner here?
No, not at all, Andrew, because we've heard it all before. This time last year, the Tories were saying we've got the great new Nationality and Borders Bill and that's going to stop the votes, sort out the problem. We heard all that waffle and spin, and guess what? More and more are coming over. And what we see is the more laws they put in place, the more money they send to France, what happens? More migrants come to the UK. This will make no difference whatsoever. It'll act as a magnet for the vile people smugglers. And if it gets through the Houses of Parliament at all, which in itself is a big question. The only way you stop the boats, Andrew, is you have to pick them up safely and take them back to France, which you can do under existing laws.
Well, Bev and I talked to somebody on this programme last week saying just that, your colleague Ben Habib, who said, also, Germany has a relationship whereby they say nobody comes in from Albania.
Correct.
We're still letting them in from Albania and then trying to kick them out. Why do we do everything in reverse when the legislation's there already to stop them?
Because we've got woke, wet, incompetent Home Office caseworkers, which is why one of our key six-point plan is that you've got to have a whole new Department of Immigration staffed by people who believe in the cause of secure borders, knowing who's coming in and who's going out. It's not rocket science, but it's important for safety of British citizens.
Are you frustrated by all of this focus on Gary Lineker's opinion on this story, as opposed to holding Suella Braverman and her policy to account?
Yeah, look, I mean, Gary is Gary, and it has sort of blown up into a whole sort of broader picture about the BBC and all that good stuff. Look, my view on the Lineker thing is that he clearly broke the corporate guidelines. He was in breach of the editorial guidelines. He was in breach of the social media guidelines. And there's no question. He also brought the BBC into disrepute. I mean, it's an absolute shambles. They're there to give the news, not to be the news. All the other presenters, likewise, brought the whole channel into disrepute, and they should be properly sanctioned. Many people will be happy they've reached an agreement, but it's an absolute turning point for the relationship of the BBC and the UK population. Why should we be forced to pay a licence fee if it's no longer going to be an impartial, trusted public service broadcast?
But it hasn't been that, Richard. It hasn't been an impartial, trusted...
But that's what we've been told.
For such a long time.
You're right, but we were told that it's supposed to be. And if it's not, and if we accept that...
That's what the Charter says.
And that's what the Charter... If we accept that, then that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to pay let's say, a fee for BBC News to be impartial, but if I don't want all the other stuff, I don't want to be forced to pay.
And have you seen his tweet today saying how thrilled he is and how grateful he is to Tim Davie, the Director-General? And by the way, my view on this bill is he's effectively cocked a snook at the BBC. He's untouchable now. He will say and do what he likes.
And the point is, no one is indispensable. Interesting that the viewership on Saturday evening went up by 500,000. I wasn't one of them, but nevertheless.
Nor me.
Look, I think they're overpaid. I think they've acted like prima donnas. It would have been a great opportunity, actually, to say, do you know what? You can all disappear for 6 months. We'll bring in some great young new blood, save the taxpayer a load of cash, and I suspect no one would have cared.
And wouldn't they have been presenters who have no opinions, who aren't politically engaged, who sit there every day and talk about the offside rule and who got a red card? I don't want to live in that world, Richard.
But you do if you're a football fan, Bev. That's what you go on to hear about, the football techniques, the tactics, who was fastest, who's fittest, who's got an injury problem. That's what you watch Match of the Day for. Those are opinions. He doesn't tend to talk about immigration
during a live broadcast. That would be weird.
He'd be in serious trouble over that.
That would be.
He doesn't do he does draw a line between his sports presenting and his political
I guess where we're at is that this has been it's been a seismic moment which will clarify however long this review takes. Let's hope it's a couple of weeks rather than a couple of years.
Can I just stop it? What is the point of the review of what social media output freelancers have when Gary Lineker has been breaching the guidelines for the last 6 to 8 years? Why haven't they already got the guidance in place?
Because they
have, and he's ignored it.
Correct, and because they're incompetent, and because he thinks he's bigger than the BBC.
He is.
Look, let's sort it out. This issue about freelance, though, is absolutely irrelevant. He's there representing the BBC. He's part of the face of the BBC, and he needs to.
It's one of the most famous parts of the BBC.
He needs to comply with the BBC guidelines and rules.
So here you go, Richard Tice. If he came out and did a tweet tomorrow saying, "I'm going to vote reform in the next election," you'd be a big fan of his for saying that, wouldn't you?
Then absolutely everything's fine.
Exactly. That's my point.
I'm only joking.
It'd be a tough one, though, wouldn't it?
I hope you're joking.
It would be a tough one.
No, but the truth is, if he had come out supporting government policy, he'd have been fired instantly because the lefties at the BBC wouldn't have liked it.
Outraged by somebody supporting a Tories.
Would have been they'd have been going nuts. They'd have been calling
Did you
him to be
notice the number of
fired.
people who pointed out Alistair Campbell, who was all over the BBC saying it's outrageous, defending Gary Lineker, and who produces Alistair Campbell's very tedious podcast? Gary Lineker's own company. Of course it does. And the BBC don't declare an interest.
Richard, I can't have you here without asking about your partner, Isabel Oakeshott, responsible for the Matt Hancock WhatsApp messages in The Telegraph, for people who don't know. How is she?
She's OK, thank you very much for asking. It's been an extraordinary 2 weeks. Without question, the response has proved that it's overwhelmingly in the public interest. She's had so many emotional, heart-wrenching messages and emails from members of the public. She is absolutely no doubt at all it was the right thing to do. The way the industry has behaved, frankly, has been nothing short of disgusting, appalling. Many people who wouldn't know a scoop of it, slap them in the face, need to, I think, give themselves a really long, hard look about how they've responded.
Has she got a book in this?
Has she got a book?
Well, you know, because it's been a major world event. International.
It has been a huge international event. She's done media all over the world because what we are seeing is that actually we've seen how leaders abuse power, and absolute power leads to absolute corruption, and we've seen that with these messages. I think there are huge lessons to learn. The most important of which is we can't wait a decade for a £300 million public inquiry. We need the answers this year.
It'll be longer than that. Bloody Sunday, 40 years.
You know, I'll be having retirement parties.
Are they going to change the parameters of the COVID inquiry now because of Isabel's messages?
I certainly hope so. Already the inquiry chair has said it won't take a decade. We'll hold us to account that. Yeah. What they need to do is they need to run everything in parallel, rapidly. Do you know they've got over 60 barristers on the job? They've committed over 116 million quid on 5-year contracts. That's
outrageous. That's scandalous.
It's a civil service. Kick the can down the road until everyone's long gone. It's not good enough in our country. It is not good enough.
Doing it for years. Iraq as well. How long did that take? 12 years?
It's a scandal, absolute scandal. Well, thank her from me
I will indeed.
for keeping the conversation alive.